Hi, this is Theo from parkerblocks.com.
Today I'm in Little India here in Singapore. This video is going to be a full-length tutorial for my patron supporters. For those who do not have the access to that, you can enjoy this time-lapse.
This is quite a complicated scene. I think I shall just focus on the foreground because you can see that the background extends all the way up and there are some housing blocks right at the end. These are the two buildings that I'm going to focus on today. This one on the left side and this one with the balcony on the right side. Before I start, let me show you the tools I'll be using today. This is my box set of Daniel Smith watercolors, and this is the portable rosemary brush. On the right side here is the Derwent sketching pencil that is water soluble. This is the Khadi Papers sketchbook, two clips, and a small glass bottle for washing my watercolor brush. I will be using a pencil first to mark out the composition. Usually I do this for scenes that are very complicated, very complex, and there are a lot of things going on. So today I'm going to be using this Derwent sketching pencil that is water soluble. I'm going to lightly sketch in the lines for this building on the left side first, and then work myself from the left to the right. After that, I'm going to go in with my fountain pen to darken the lines. As long as the proportion and the general shapes are correct, you can go on to correct them later on to make them more accurate. But it's important to mark out the general shapes first. So now I'm trying to divide the biggest area that I see into different parts, and later on I can just go in to add in details. This is actually the first time that I'm using the Derwent pencil for sketching these lines. I hope when I apply watercolor over it later on, it will just dissolve and disappear. The vanishing line is actually off the page, but as long as you measure the angles correctly, you'll be able to get it correct. If you have trouble measuring the angles, you can put your pencil on the paper and hold your sketchbook like this, and just point it to the front of where you are looking at so that you can get the correct angle. And make sure that the pencil is on the paper at all times. Do not leave the pencil off the surface like this. Make sure that it's on the paper at all times. So this building goes all the way up here and then comes down. And this is the boundary of the building. I actually do not have an eraser with me today, so any lines that I draw that is wrong, I won't be able to erase it. The trick to getting the drawing to be accurate is to actually draw slowly and spend a lot of time observing and measuring the angles. So this line here is actually tilts up a bit, and there is a 45-degree angle line here, comes down here. All these rules are very challenging, especially when it comes to getting the angles right, so always be measuring. This tilts up a bit as well, and then there's this line that comes down here. It's easier to draw the big shapes first before you add in the detail, because if you get the big shapes wrong, no matter the details you add, it's not going to look right. So you have to make sure that you get the big shapes correct the first time. I think this is it. I'm now going to focus on this side, so let's try and ink this. This is, by the way, the Pelikan M200 fountain pen that I like to use. Let me zoom in closer so that you can see the details clearer. Same thing, I want to draw the big shapes first. Drawing complicated scenes, as I've mentioned earlier, is all about concentration. The more focused you are, the more accurate your sketch is going to be. There is a lamppost here, so I'm just going to draw that in. I think I made an error here. I think when you're drawing, it's best not to stress out. Like, don't stress yourself on getting everything correctly. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if sketching is just a hobby, you don't have to stress yourself out. Now, as I'm drawing this window here, to get the height of this window, I actually reference it to this circle that I've drawn earlier. So this aligns with this, and the bottom here aligns with this signboard here. So this is how you check the proportion and alignment or accuracy. This pillar goes all the way down and it stops here because again, I'm using this area as a reference, so this point here stops somewhere around here. There are a few people standing on the street, so I want to draw them in just so that they will overlap the walking path behind. Alright, let me move my way up here. So as you can see, when I'm drawing, I don't really work, or I can just jump from places to places. It doesn't really matter. Drawing is like a jigsaw puzzle at times. Sometimes if you find that you are a bit tired working at a certain area, you can just jump and move on to the next area. I think my ink lines are starting to depart from my pencil lines already. So the pencil lines are really quite helpful, just to make sure that you are on the right track. By the way, today is a very cloudy day, so there's no shadow to speak of. So it might be a bit difficult later on when I'm trying to color this sketch. The important thing is to make sure that the line art is accurate first before you paint. Let me measure this line. This line actually goes down from the left to the right. And this is the lamppost that is on the road. Let me draw that in right now. And I want to add more people walking on the street. There's actually a car here, a van here. It's important to get the size of this van correct. So to do that, just measure this van to the nearest largest area here, which is this line here. So this van is actually about half or 1/3 of this line here, and that is the proportion that I want to draw. It's the same thing for other cars as well. Now I'm drawing another building. I'm trying to use thin lines for this building because this building is in the background. So when I use thinner lines, it doesn't draw as much attention. As for this part, I'll just let it fade away into the white of the paper. Truck here, and more people standing and walking around. So people who are in the background, who are further away, are going to be smaller than people standing closer to you. So for people who are standing further away, they don't need a lot of detail. I'm going to start off with the corner of this building first, which the corner is actually, let me just take a look. There's actually a building, a smaller building behind, so I'm just going to draw that first. So that's the rooftop of the smaller building. and this is the corner of the other building that I'm talking about. So this is the first corner, and the other corner is somewhere around here. So once I have the starting point and the ending point, I can just go in to connect the dots. Again, make sure that the proportion is correct. Always be measuring. Now here you can see that I'm deviating away from my pencil lines. So as I'm drawing, I realized that my pencil lines are not very accurate, so that's why I moved away from that. I realized that I forgot to draw the windows here, so let me go and complete the windows. The bottom of this pillar is actually at this taxi sign here, so as I'm drawing, I'm constantly referencing to other points that I've already drawn, just to make sure that the proportion is correct. If the proportion is off, it's going to look a bit weird. Now the bottom of this corner here, the pillar here, actually aligns with the top of the balcony, so it's going to be somewhere around here. So it's going to look like this. This is how you get the angle that you want. So there are 1, 2, 3. I'm not exactly sure how many pillars there are. 1, 2, 3. So you have to be very careful and count properly. You can subdivide it. This will make it easier. So I will start from the center. There is center, and then there are two more windows on this side and on this side. These are very challenging to draw because they are very foreshortened, and also the perspective of these balconies, they are not easy. Again, if you really need the accuracy, draw slowly. I'm actually drawing relatively fast because the sun is almost going to go down. I want to make sure I can finish this before this place gets dark. And now I can go in and draw the rooftop for this. Now as you are drawing, you might also, when you are planning, you might also want to take into account of the gutter. So you might want to put the gutter at places where you don't have to draw over. For example, you might want to put the gutter right here at the road here, so you don't have to draw anything on the road and you can just fit the gutter here. Because right now, as you can see, when I'm drawing over the gutter, the lines do not connect and they don't look very nice. For this building here, I need to find out where it ends. So I think the pillar ends around here. Yep, just make sure you know where it ends and you can draw a straight line down later on. There's a person standing here, another person standing here. There are several signboards coming out, so I want to draw them. I don't have to be very accurate right now. and I want to draw more people just standing on the roadside. Now for the details at the back, I'm just going to let it fade again into the white of the paper. I don't want to draw so much detail. This is the van that I'm talking about. There are more people crowding around. And there is actually a walking pathway that runs here, so I'm going to use a very faint line to denote that. Sometimes you might want to introduce people to break the rhythm. For example, I could have drawn this line here down all the way, but I wanted to add in some people just to break the rhythm, to give that sense of depth, because people overlap onto the walking path, gives it a sense of depth. Alright, so as I move here, there's another building down here. I'll draw this later on. I'll start with the buildings up here first, because if I draw this now, later when I draw the buildings here, chances are my hand is going to smudge the area here. So I will draw the top first.
The pencil lines here still provide a very good reference. This area has a lot of repeated pattern because all the roofs here, they look quite similar. So once you draw one of them, you can sort of draw everyone, but always make sure that you try to observe what you're drawing, because some of these, even in repeated pattern, there are little differences and you might want to capture that to give it more character. So I work myself from the left to the right, and then I move on to the rooftops for the building on the lower level. So I have sped up this section of the video because the drawing process is really similar to other areas of my sketch. Next, I will move on to the next building here, right at the bottom here. Drawing rooftops, especially when the roof is tilted, is very challenging because of the angles. First of all, the angles, they have very different vanishing points. So for a roof that has two tilted sides, there are going to be two vanishing points, and sometimes the angle is a bit difficult to capture. So in this case, for this particular roof, I try to measure the angles by stretching my hand out, elbows locked, and use my pencils to measure the angle. And when I get the angle, I use the clock face analogy, like what angle is that? Is that a 1 p.m. angle, 11 o'clock angle, 6:30 angle? And when I have that in mind, I can easily replicate that on paper. I'm drawing the little details in the balcony.
I find that the street is a bit too empty, so I'm just going to draw in additional things. Now there is a bus that is parked right in front by the side of this road, so I'm just going to draw in the bus. This is a pretty big bus. Let's make sure that I got the proportion of the bus correct. Also, there are some more cars and vans parked around here. I want to draw them in as well. I think this is almost completed. I just need to make sure that I have added the correct details. So I'm just going to look at the scene in front of me and compare it to my sketch to add in additional details to places where they need detail.
I'm going to speed up this section here where I used watercolor. The main thing to note when using watercolor is most artists, they would start from the light to the dark, so that applies to me as well. So for the lighter areas of the buildings, I will mix lemon yellow with quinacridone red. Even though there are 12 colors, I limit myself to several colors. So the colors that I'm using today would be lemon yellow, new gamboge, quinacridone red, transparent pyrrole red, and phthalo blue. Now all these 5 colors, they are transparent. Later on, when I mix the color for the road, they are going to be mixed together. I'll mix 3 primary colors together to get a gray tone for the road. Now as you look at me coloring the roof right now, this is mixed with new gamboge and transparent pyrrole orange. New gamboge is an orange color and transparent pyrrole orange is a warm red. So when you mix these 2 colors together, you get a nice warm orange. Also, I use quite a bit of water in this area here because I wanted to get some variation. So while the wash is still wet, I added some concentrated transparent pyrrole orange into the mix so that I can get that gradient. So this is a very nice technique to get some variation in your wash. Make sure that you use a bit more water and then add in concentrated color while the wash is still wet. So later on when it's dry, you will be able to see some sort of gradient going on. If you were to mix the watercolors very completely, like orange and red very completely, then your wash is going to appear a bit flat. Now for this rooftop on the left side, I mixed it with new gamboge and quinacridone red because the roofs here, the colors here are a bit, how should I say, in real life they are a bit more red compared to the roofs on the right side. So in this case, I wanted to use a different red for the roof. Now as I look around the scene, I will try to spot all the different areas that are using the red color. So for some of the cars on the road, for some of the buildings in the background, I will still continue to use the red color. And also this wall section right here, I'm using red and orange to touch up the little details. As you can see, I use quite a lot of paint for the left and right side. Sometimes when you mix the paints, you run out of paint and you go back to mix again, it will not result in the same color, or it can be very challenging to get back the same color. So when you don't know how much paint to mix, I would advise you to mix more than enough. Now for this road section which I'm painting in right now, I actually use quinacridone red, lemon yellow, and phthalo blue. I think, if I remember correctly, I used more phthalo blue and quinacridone red, so you can get to see some purple color that is result from mixing phthalo blue and the red. Again, this is not very, the specific color is actually not very important. As long as you mix 3 primary colors together, you're going to get some gray tone. The specific color is really not very important. The more important thing is to, when you're doing pen and ink sketches like this, make sure that colors you use to mix are transparent, so the resulting mixture will be transparent as well. If you look at the road section, you can see some variation in colors. This technique that I use here is a bit different compared to the technique I used to color the roofs. Now for the roads, I did not mix the colors completely, so the individual colors still stand out when I apply the wash onto the road. This is quite interesting because you get to see different colors and it makes the wash a bit more interesting. I'm now adding the darks to the dark areas. This is mixed with phthalo green and quinacridone red, so this gives me a very nice dark. Even though it's a very cloudy day, I still need to add darks. When you look at a scene when you're drawing, always try to spot where the darks are, and usually they are quite close to black.
I think this side is dry, so I want to use my red ink pencil to draw in some lines, just to give it some additional texture. There are some blue markings on this building, so I'm using the blue Inktense pencil to draw in the markings. Now I'm going to use this dark wash to darken up some areas. Even though this is an overcast day, I still want to put some shadow underneath the people and also, of course, the bus and the vehicles, just to ground them to the ground. I think this is almost completed. Usually for roads like this, I will go in to put additional dots just to give it some more texture. I'm going to use the other side of the fountain pen nib so that I can get a smaller dot. I don't want the dots to be too pronounced. Just put a few dots here and there. I put most of the dots in the foreground and just maybe 1 or 2, 3 dots in the background. As I touch up the sketch with additional dots, I realized that there are some places that I have forgotten to color, so I'm just going to go in to use watercolor again to touch up those places. That would be this area here, and also some of these areas. So this is it. This is the completed sketch. I noticed that I wasn't able to fully dissolve the Derwent sketching pencil, so I can still see pencil lines show through below the watercolor. For these areas here where there are still pencil lines, later when I'm back home, I'll just use the eraser to erase them. That's all for today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. If you want to watch the full-length tutorial, you can support me on Patreon. I will also post a link to the high-res scan of the sketch so you can check out that in full detail. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.